I bought my mountain cabin as a quiet escape from city noise. Just pine trees, fresh air, and the sound of a nearby creek. No neighbors, no HOA, no nonsense. At least, that's what I thought. One morning I drove up to the cabin for a weekend getaway. When I arrived, an envelope was taped to my cabin door. It was printed with official-looking letterhead. Mountain Ridge HOA, notice of violation. My heart sank. Violation? The letter claimed I had installed unauthorized fencing and non-compliant exterior lighting. It even listed a $2,500 fine due in 14 days. I blinked, reread it twice, and then laughed. There's no HOA up here, I muttered. My property was several miles outside the Mountain Ridge community. I called the number listed on the letter. A sharp voice answered. Mountain Ridge HOA, this is Karen speaking. I explained calmly. There's been a mistake. My cabin isn't in your HOA. Karen cut me off. Sir, every property on Pineview Road is under our jurisdiction. Except mine, I replied. Check the county map. My cabin's on Red Creek Trail, outside your boundary. Karen scoffed. I've lived here 15 years. I know every lot. You're not special. The arrogance in her tone was unreal. I hung up and drove to the Mountain Ridge office the next day, determined to clear things up in person. When I walked in, Karen was exactly what I expected. Mid-50s, blonde bob haircut, phone in one hand, clipboard in the other, glaring like I'd stolen her lawn ornament. Ah, Mr. Cabin Guy, she said with a smirk. Here to pay your fine? I handed her my property documents. No, here to prove you have no authority over my land. She barely glanced at the papers. I don't need to see these. You're part of the community, whether you like it or not. We'll send a second notice. That's when I realized she wasn't interested in facts, just control. I drove to the county records office and requested an official zoning map. Sure enough, my property was clearly outside Mountain Ridge HOA boundaries by nearly 2 miles. I called Karen again, ready to end this nonsense. But she doubled down. Those maps are outdated, she insisted. We'll fine you regardless. At that moment I decided enough was enough. Next stop, the sheriff's office. The next morning I drove into town and stopped by the county sheriff's office. Sheriff Daniels, a rugged man with years of calm authority behind his eyes, listened as I explained everything, the fine, the letter, and Karen's refusal to back down. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his chin. You're saying the HOA's trying to fine you for property they don't even control? Exactly, I replied, handing him the official zoning map from the county office. Daniel studied it for a moment and gave a small grin. Well, this'll be interesting. He grabbed his hat and radio. Let's go pay this Karen a visit. We drove up the winding mountain road toward the Mountain Ridge HOA office. When we stepped out of the truck, Karen was already standing outside, clipboard clutched like a weapon. Oh, so you brought reinforcements, she sneered, eyeing me and the sheriff. Let me guess, trying to intimidate me? The sheriff smiled politely. Ma'am, I'm here because there seems to be a misunderstanding about property. Jurisdiction. Karen crossed her arms. No misunderstanding. This man's cabin violates HOA lighting and fencing codes. He owes fines. Daniels pulled out the county map. According to official county records, this man's cabin is located outside the Mountain Ridge boundary. You've got no authority over his property. Karen snatched the map from his hand and squinted at it. This can't be right. We've always included that area. Always, the sheriff said. Doesn't mean legally. Her face turned red. You don't understand. The HOA board approved expansion years ago. Daniels raised an eyebrow. Expansion? Was it approved by the county? Karen hesitated. Well, but it was voted on. The sheriff chuckled. Ma'am, you can't expand jurisdiction by a neighborhood vote. You'd need county approval, legal filings, and updated deeds. Karen's confidence crumbled. So, you're saying he's not under us? Exactly, the sheriff confirmed. You've been trying to fine a man who doesn't even belong to your HOA. That's called harassment. I couldn't help but smirk. Karen stammered. Well, maybe he should be under us. His property affects our views. Daniels gave her a look that could freeze lava. If I hear about another letter or fine sent to this man, I'll personally open a harassment report on you and the HOA board. Karen stood there, speechless for the first time. As we walked away, Daniels turned to me. People like her give real communities a bad name. Glad we cleared that up before it got uglier. I nodded. Thanks, Sheriff. I owe you one. But as we drove off, I caught sight of Karen through the rearview mirror, already on her phone, fuming. Something told me she wasn't done yet. For a few peaceful days, I thought the storm had passed. The sheriff had set her straight, and the mountain air felt sweeter than ever. I spent my mornings fixing the porch railing, and my evenings watching the sun melt behind the pines. But just when I thought it was over, the letters started again. First, a final notice from the Mountain Ridge HOA appeared in my mailbox. Same fine, same threats, now with late fees. Then came another, this time claiming my unauthorized livestock was disturbing the community. Livestock? I didn't even own a chicken. I called the HOA office, and of course Karen answered. "Karen, we went through this," I said sharply. "You have no authority here." "Oh, I remember," she said sweetly. "But we filed a new petition with the county to expand our boundaries. Until that's resolved, you're provisionally included." "Provisionally included?" I laughed. "That's not a thing." Karen's tone shifted from fake nice to venomous. "You think you can hide behind that sheriff? You'll see what happens when the board gets involved." I hung up and decided to visit the property in person again. When I arrived that weekend, I noticed something chilling. Bright orange. HOA violation signs were now staked into my driveway, and someone had spray-painted "Community Rules Apply" across my fence. That was it. I drove straight back down the mountain and returned to Sheriff Daniels' office. When he saw the photos, his jaw tightened. "She did what?" "She's trespassing and vandalizing now," I said. "She's crossing lines." Daniels picked up the phone and made a call. Within minutes, 2 deputies were dispatched to the HOA office. He looked at me and said, "We're going to settle this once and for all." When the deputies arrived at Mountain Ridge, Karen tried to play her usual game, waving her clipboard and insisting I was a problem homeowner. But this time, the sheriff himself showed up with county records in hand. "Karen," he said firmly, "you've officially crossed into criminal behavior, vandalism, false claims, and harassment. You're done." Karen's smug grin finally vanished. "You can't arrest me. I'm an HOA board member." Daniels smiled coldly. "Then you should have known the law better." They handed her a court summons right there in front of her staff. The color drained from her face as deputies photographed the vandalized signs. As I stood nearby, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I just didn't know that Karen's fight was about to get even uglier. She wasn't going to face this quietly. 2 weeks later, I found myself in county court, watching Karen sit at the defendant's table in her trademark beige cardigan, arms crossed, lips pursed tight as a lemon. She looked furious, not because she'd done wrong, but because she'd finally been caught. Sheriff Daniels nodded at me from the back of the courtroom. He'd brought every piece of evidence, the letters, the photos of my vandalized fence, even the official zoning map blown up on a large display board. The judge, a gray-haired man with a calm but commanding voice, began the hearing. "Ms. Karen Roberts, you are accused of harassment, property vandalism, and issuing false citations under the guise of HOA authority. How do you plead?" Karen stood up defiantly. "Your Honor, I was only enforcing community rules. His property affects the visual harmony of Mountain Ridge." The judge frowned. "According to county records, Mr. Walker's cabin lies outside your HOA by nearly 2 miles. You had no jurisdiction whatsoever." Karen pointed at me, voice trembling with frustration. "But he uses the same mountain road. That counts." The courtroom chuckled. Even the clerk hid a smile. Sheriff Daniels stepped forward and unrolled the large county map. "As you can see, Your Honor, this cabin is outside the boundary lines in every legal record. Ms. Roberts has ignored multiple warnings from my office and continued her behavior." Karen's face flushed deep red. "Those maps are wrong. We voted to expand." The judge raised a hand. "Voting does not rewrite county boundaries. Ms. Roberts, what you did was unlawful." The silence that followed was glorious. Then the judge added, "Furthermore, the vandalism and posted violation signs on Mr. Walker's property are clear evidence of trespassing. This court orders immediate cessation of all HOA contact with the plaintiff, reimbursement for property damages, and a formal written apology." Karen gasped. "Apology?" The judge nodded. "Yes, Ms. Roberts. Written, signed, and filed with the county office." I tried not to smile, but the look on her face was priceless. As we walked out, Sheriff Daniels patted my shoulder. "Well, looks like you just helped the whole mountain. Folks won't have to deal with her nonsense anymore." "Think she'll actually write that apology?" I asked. He chuckled. "She'll have to. Court orders a lot stronger than an HOA letter." A week later, I received the letter, typed, grudgingly signed, and stamped official. I, Karen Roberts, acknowledge that Mr. Walker's property is not part of Mountain Ridge HOA and regret the misunderstanding. I framed it and hung it in my cabin right next to the door. Now every time I walk in, I see that letter and smile, a reminder that even in the wild mountains, you can't escape an HOA Karen. But sometimes justice wins higher ground.